everyone. My name is Sarah Hamaty. I am she, her pronouns. I'm a Middle Eastern actor, singer, writer, makeup artist, lover, and friend. I am thrilled to be moderating and joining this convo today, centering the pandemic pivot. We have some lovely panelists with us today. I'm going to go around and introduce everyone one by one. And everyone, as we go one by one, you can introduce your favorite Zoom beverage if you have one and you love one, or you can just say it. Say whatever you want to say. Just say how you're doing today. Mine's an iced coffee with some oat milk. Okay. That's what I've got. So first we have the lovely Shakina Nayfack from NBC's Connecting and Hulu's Difficult People. Hey, Shakina, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I think my favorite Zoom drink is probably just a little whiskey with a single ice cube, but it's early, so I'm not doing that now.
Okay. Love that. We have next Natasha Sinha. She's the Associate Artistic Director of Playwrights Horizons and co-founder of the Beehive Dramaturgy Studio. Hey, how you doing, Natasha?
Good. I'd also say a Boulevardier or a Manhattan that my partner makes to keep me from losing my mind during the pandemic would be my fave, but also we'll hold off on that until the next 8 meetings of the day.
Amazing. Next, we have Michael Kushner, who is the host of the popular podcast Dear Multi-Hyphenate, the creator of the Dressing Room Project, and the executive producer of the Emmy-nominated Indoor Boys. Hey, Michael.
Hi everyone. I'm so honored to be in everyone's presence. This is amazing. Hi, BroadwayCon. So since I'm a COVID long hauler, I've noticed that not drinking alcohol right now is helping the healing process. I miss whiskey. I miss it so much. But I have been on a kombucha kick. It is definitely helping. And it gives me that buzz. So kombucha.
I love that. Next, we have Justin Guarini, who is seen in American Idol's first season, as well as on Broadway and Wicked, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, In Transit, and more. He has a book coming out entitled Unshakable Confidence. Hey, Justin.
Hey, how are you today? Thank you very much for having me here. It's awesome. I, too, am just going to take it nice and easy, have a little bit of water today, and I'm excited for this conversation because the pivot is so vital to what it is that we all do, and I can't wait to get into it with you.
Very much agree on that. Next, we have Marla. Hi, Marla. You could see her in Beautiful, the Carole King musical. She's also the co-founder of Claim Our Space Now. How you doing, Marla?
I'm doing well. And in talking about the pivot to Claim Our Space Now, the drink that keeps me going as an activist, that work is quite hard. And at the end of a long day of meetings, I have found that red wine with a splash of Casamigos really takes you there. Oh yeah, get into it.
Wow.
Wow. Okay,
but right now,
trying.
It's coffee though for today.
Okay. So later. The wine.
Yes, later it's a must.
Okay, I will be trying that. And next we have Al Silber. You could have seen Al on Broadway in Fiddler on the Roof and Master Class. At the start of the pandemic, she was starring in Indecent at London's Menier Chocolate Factory in the West End. Al is also the author of books including After Anatevka and White Hot Greek Parade. Hey, Al.
Hi, Sarah. I'm so happy to be here in such esteemed company. And such a great question. For me, the beverages vary, but it's important that there are several present. You don't know, what if this is an iced coffee moment? And then you're like, now I need water. You know what I mean? I like to have a variety. And my alcoholic shift of choice is very, very new to the pandemic, the pickle martini. Has anyone ever had that with pickle juice? And sometimes when you want to have it early, I was going to say, Shakina, if you ever want to have it early, my justification is it's noon somewhere.
Noon. That's all you need.
Yeah.
I love that. Wow. Welcome, everyone. I just wanted to take a breath to enter the space before we start this really very important conversation about the pandemic pivot, being artists, what it means to be an artist, and what it means to be malleable, flexible, and committed to the craft, and also committed to yourself as a human being, which makes us very versatile, dynamic people. So I really want to step into that. Thank you for being here. I really love looking at all these faces, and I'm very, very excited to hear about your personal human experience and what it's been like for you. So thank you for joining us today. I'm just gonna basically go around and chat a little bit about your life, what you've been doing. And I have a couple of questions for every single panelist here, and you can kind of go and bounce off of each other if you feel like doing so. And that's it. There's a lot of freedom. So we'll just get started with that if everyone feels good. Okay, so Shakina, let's start with you. That's where we started. All right. You had two. Okay. You had two beautiful projects during the pandemic. One, you filmed a network TV show called Connecting on ABC, and it was filmed in your apartment. And
NBC.
the second one, what?
Oh, NBC.
NBC.
Yes.
My apologies. On Connecting on NBC. And two, Chonburi International Hotel and Butterfly Club that you wrote and acted in. Can you talk about both the practical and spiritual pivot you had to experience during this pandemic?
Yeah. So, I have this solo show called Manifest Pussy. And in the show, I say, manifesting pussy requires specificity. And it's so true that you have to set a clear intention for the work you want to do creatively, but you also have to stay flexible. So I had spent, years praying, wishing, trying, auditioning to become a series regular on a network sitcom. That's that was and still remains the big dream. But I didn't know that it would be a network sitcom that I'd be filming in my kitchen with my partner behind an iPhone. And likewise, I had been working for years on writing this play, Chonburi International Hotel and Butterfly Club, doing readings and workshops in the city and at Williamstown, getting ready for the world premiere production. And then to find out that instead of having this radical cast of 13 with 9 actors of trans experience in the bucolic mountains of Western Massachusetts, we would be in our closets scattered throughout New York City doing an audio play. So both of those things were absolute blessings, to have a job, to be making money, to be working and having something to do, waking up to put makeup on and hair on was a real gift come the fall, when I was ready to just crash into the quarantine malaise. But yeah, it's that, that expression, if you stay ready, you don't got to get ready. It was that kind of thing, because I vowed, when everything started, I was there are people who get through these moments and they come out on the other side thriving. And I'm just going to commit to being one of those people. I'm just putting that out here now, that whatever happens, I will sustain and survive. My partner and I will get through it. Our dog will get through it. And of course, it has not been easy. And there's been loss in my family, and I've watched my friends experience all that hardship. But staying true to the goal, in your center, which is not I want to be a star, but is I want to create work that speaks to people in a time of need. Then, how great that I was able to do that in a different way than expected, but still, getting the message out and getting the stories out.
Thank you for that. That was lovely. It made me think of something else to ask you about that as well. Did you find there was a transition period for you emotionally, mentally, in understanding that that's how life was going to be? Or did you feel one day it was okay, we do this now? How did you feel?
Well, Sarah, my life is all about transitions. And I just think that I was actually tweeting this the other day, transitions are not linear things. We sort of ambiguously move forward and back and around and over and under. So even when you set a clear intention and set yourself toward a goal, whether that goal is I'm going to get out of bed and take a shower today, or that goal is I'm going to produce a network sitcom in my living room, you have to be open to especially during this time, the emotional waves of not only your subconscious, but the collective subconscious that you're a part of right now, that we're all kind of, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but I feel we'll all probably talk at some point about the collective trauma that we're trying to work through. And that's not under your control. There are days when you just have to lay it down on the couch, and it's okay to feel hopeless sometimes, as long as you can, like I said, stay attuned to that central focal point, the candle that you have burning in your personal vigil that you're guarding from the wind. And as long as you can stay in touch with that, you can take the bobs and weaves of the, of the pandemic transition.
Beautifully said. Yes, that no expectations mentality opens up a lot of freedom for anything to be possible. So I love that. Does anyone want to jump in, have anything to add on that?
I'd say you weren't stealing. Ooh, kidding. Mm-hmm. Yep. Beautifully said. And I was going to say, you're not stealing anyone's thunder because it's our collective thunder. We are all, and the louder that it roars, in terms of making change personally as a collective as well, that's what we need to move forward. So our thunder is ours to share.
I love that. Thank you for the reflection.
Our thunder is ours to share. That was beautiful. Okay. Al Silber. Hi. I love your beautiful red blazer. Obviously. What is the difference to you between pivoting and giving up? Do they go together? Are they separate? Can you speak about giving up, surrender, strategic disengagement, pivoting? Elaborate in whatever way you feel.
Love. I think this is a subject that I've been fascinated by pre-pandemic, that I think everyone has awakened to inside the pandemic. I think much the way, I don't know if any of you overstand this next comment, where the entire world was like, I'm unemployed for an unknown period of time. And actors were like, welcome, like that sensation, right? But one of the things that I've been fascinated by for years and really tried to dive into is sort of four connected phrases that I think exist in two categories. So like, I'll say, I think a lot of the time when people talk about pivoting, particularly artists, and I'll also include people with a very specific passionate dream, whatever it may be. It's just that artists tend to sort of embody that at its peak, right? They talk about making it or giving up, and sort of nothing in between, right? And not having any grace for any of the nuances of growing up, of life circumstances, of you changing or the world changing around you. And what I would say is, sometimes my partner is a very like movement physical person, and he always says these beautiful things about like, if you could move beyond describing it and simply use a physical gesture. Isn't that brilliant? How would you manifest this? And I think this is a great example. I view giving up as a real collapsed gesture, right? There's a hopelessness in it. There's sometimes a cynicism in it, and a real anger that's covering pain of disappointment and grief. And it's very collapsed, and it's not a place. Giving up is not a place where action and dreaming beyond can exist. And it's very tense. And by the way, if anyone has any other thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Whereas surrender, to me, is a very open gesture, right? There's this feeling that you are, maybe a lot of your actions are very similar, but there's something about it that comes from a place of peace and a place of lack of tension, and staying open to the possibilities of life without this previously rigorous dream, right? And then beyond those two concepts, right, which I think are sort of crucial, sort of no matter what you do, right? Because we all have to be able to surrender to life's realities. There's something deeper, which I think this entire panel is about, which is, what is the difference between, giving up, surrender, strategic disengagement, and pivoting? And to me, strategic disengagement and pivoting are very connected, but they're ever so slightly different. I think I would probably describe strategic disengagement as like after you have an epiphany, and what is an epiphany? It's often described as a visceral understanding of something you already knew. After you have an epiphany, like, wow, I don't want to be a performer, or wow, I don't want to live in New York, or wow, this person should not be my partner, whatever it is, peacefully walking away from something that you previously loved and felt committed to, not necessarily with a plan. And I feel like strategic disengagement is encapsulated by the phrase, well, I know what I don't want, which is really good data, right? And pivoting, which is like its twin cousin, if you will, like on the Patty Duke show, after a change of circumstances or reality, which can include an epiphany, peacefully turning your focus from something you previously loved and felt committed to something else you love and feel committed to, oftentimes with a plan. And I think that it's really important for us, again, my partner always says like gesture matters and body matters, but I also think that being able to name what a pivot is very empowering. And I think that those are, to me, the things that have really guided my life. And I try to stay curious about all four of those things and attempt to always like redefine them based on how the world changes or how I'm changing or any discoveries I make. Thank you.
Beautifully said, yeah. And I love the Patty Duke reference in there too, by the way.
Listen, I watch Nick at Night.
Yeah, it's impressive. I would say that, just to tag on to what you said, that expansion is not possible, pivoting is not possible, growth is not possible without surrender.
Amen. Without,
in essence, giving up. But when we think about giving up and surrender, it feels like we're losing something, which is what you spoke to, right? Whereas all the things that we've ever achieved and we've gotten, whether it's something with your body, something in your relationship, something in your spirituality, something in your business, comes from having to walk through the gate of death. Not physical death necessarily, but a death of sorts, a letting go of, a burning off of, a surrendering to something. And so, as you so beautifully put it, Al, like, if we can become comfortable with the idea of surrender, if we can become comfortable with the idea of a death in order to have life and new life. If you think of a forest, right? How many times has a forest burned down in order to then be reborn better, stronger, more trees, all that? And it's what we do in our business. And just the last thing I'll say is, yeah, that whole thing where everybody's unemployed and we're like, oh, we don't know what to do. It's like, we've been doing this for years. Like, come on, this is what we do. And so I feel like as artists, we are more prepared, whether we know it or not, for this kind of life and this kind of event. Because whether it's just like, I need a job, or this director just asked me to go this way in rehearsal, right? Like, that's what we do. And so if more artists could be more comfortable with the idea of surrender and of pivoting and of actually having to die to one's old self, one's old habits, one's old beliefs, then I think that the pivot would be such less of a scary thing.
I just want to affirm the concept of the lack of rigidity is part of what surrender is. And that I love that so much. And thank you for those beautiful new insights. That it's that one of the things I love that you described is that these deaths of our previous selves or previous concept of reality is natural. It is an important part of embracing what nature wants us to do, which is ever evolve.
What's BroadwayCon without a parallel? But I think of Surrender Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and it's almost like the Wicked Witch of the West was imploring her to surrender, and then she would find her way back home, which is something that we do as artists constantly.
Yes, I feel like the reinvention of ourselves as artists, the letting go of ego, all of those things, the budding of new heads of flowers of ourselves is kind of what makes us amazing. Is that like sometimes, yeah, one bud does die and another bud blooms, and it's like we are ever blooming. And so that's sort of what makes us so versatile. And that kind of moves us into Marla Lusant. Really amazing and interesting work here. Marla, you and Dimitri Moise created Claim Our Space Now, whose mission is to create an intersectional space to educate, mobilize against systems that perpetuate white supremacy, with the affirmation that all Black lives matter. Their calls to action include diverse hiring practices, police accountability, and sex work decriminalization. How did you start COSP, and would you consider that a pivot? I'm so interested and really excited about this.
Yes. So Claim Our Space Now it started with a vision from my head in the midst of everything that was going on from April onwards. So starting with Ahmaud, things that obviously I'd seen before when, who had mentioned Epiphany? Was that you, Al? Yes, so like really seeing an epiphany for the first time through icons like Beyonce and Rihanna, people I had looked up to as artists who had used their art to really claim space for the Black community. I think of Beyonce and her Formation performance and how she claimed space and said, I'm going to claim space for Black women, I'm going to use Black Panthers very viscerally so that you can get the point that we are here to stay. My Black nose, my big old afro, like things like that. And I really saw the role of the artist in the revolution. And so that became part of my purpose. But in terms of how that spurred on into Claim Our Space Now, my mental health through the pandemic or through figuring out what my reaction was to George Floyd specifically, seeing a man that looks very much like my father under Derek Chauvin's knee. It was well documented on my stories on Instagram because I am very open about where I'm at. And in ideating, I was saying for weeks at the time that there needs to be a more active approach in the way that we fight against white supremacy, because throwing up hashtags is not going to cut it. Did it cut it in the 70s? Did it cut it? There were no hashtags to do that. Like, I think of how the movements that have come and gone were lacking intersectionality. White feminism, who was missing at the table? Black women, Black trans women. Why wasn't it? That's why we keep on getting into these cycles of no movement forward. And so I brought this huge idea of a vision for a space where we can galvanize and get all the resources centralized, because I should also say, I'm a computer, or was, it's fresh. I just graduated from computer science at Fordham University in December of 2020. So like I was in school through all of this. And in ideating for a website, a resource that we can truly put all of the different resources that were spiraling on social media. You probably remember national resource lists being tossed around and shared via like Twitter and all kinds of spaces. And I thought that, yes, it's overwhelming. And if we want this movement to persist and people not to check out beyond the summer, we need to make it organized. We need to make it a space where it feels safe for more than just Black people to fight for our rights, because we've seen that before and it's not going to happen again. And I was like, with my education from Fordham, I was like, yeah, there's no way that I'm going to see this in my lifetime perpetuate again. So we really have to get everybody from whatever background it is in health, because white supremacy has so many different heads of a dragon, like so in health, real estate, law, all different spaces that we can really get experts in the room and talk about ways that we can make actionable steps to dismantle white supremacy and save all Black lives. And so I brought this giant vision to Dimitri, who has, we went on tour together in Beautiful. And before the pandemic closed everything, we were in the Visitor together at the Public in rehearsal. So it was fresh. I was like, all right, I know that he has experience organizing because he's an HIV advocate and has done this work before, brought the vision, and a cute little collective, or you want a full-blown nonprofit? And I was like, well, I'm trying to make some change. So nonprofit it is, honey. So let's go. And we've been working ever since. I organized, made a call out on Instagram, and people in my direct network from the different parts of my life, the different pivots, I guess, because modeling from Fordham, from musical theater, all jumped into my DMs and organized from Instagram DMs from my iPhone. And then we got a Slack. I made a whole bunch of graphics to really make it digestible, to make sure that the vision was clarified, and people jumped in as volunteers. Ever since then, we've been doing a lot of civic engagement. So we're gonna actually relaunch our Claim the Vote initiative. We did a Pride rally, which Michael was there for and photographed, got a very iconic photograph of 4 different intersections of women, Black trans women, immigrant women, I am an immigrant from Haiti. So a lot of different groups of people that showed up to our Pride rally in support of our Black trans siblings. So a lot of work since then. Did I have any idea how fast things would have moved? Nope. But that surrender, I was like, honey, I want to do something. I know that we all have a role in this fight, and I want to make it as easy as possible for everybody to engage, because we should not have waited for what we now know is 9 minutes and however long. We don't even need to sit in that. But it shouldn't have waited that long, but I'm glad that it was an awakening for many, many people worldwide. And we have to keep the revolution going. So I'm sitting into my purpose as an artist in all the different disciplines to make the revolution irresistible any way that I can. Thank you.
Beautifully put. I think that's a lot of, I know a lot of artists and a lot of artists of color right now are feeling that extreme internal pulse to continue their activism alongside of their artistry, and that it's no longer something that they can put away and hide when they're in the room. And now it is something that lives alongside of their artistry. And I think that is something that has really shown itself in this pandemic time, is that now when I walk into a room, you're getting an artist and you're also getting the activist. And I'm no longer going to hold my tongue, you know, and wait till I get out of the rehearsal room. It's like, if we're going to be artists that are actually going to be making change, and we are revolutionary as well, then we all have to show up as activists in the room too. So it's like, now is the time, and there's no better time than right now. So I appreciate all the work that you're doing. I commend you. I'm with you. And so I'm really thrilled to hear all of that. Anyone want to jump in?
Looking forward to bring, I was just going to say, I'm looking forward to bring that into the room whenever we are back, because there is a lot of work that has to be done in the Broadway community from top to bottom. And what I've shared is that I'm going to bring my voice as openly and freely, because what they have kind of pushed us into a corner without us realizing to this day, into submitting, giving up. And I think that now that those days are over, the curtain is wide open. And it looks like Shakina unmuted, so I'll let you go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say in regards to what Sarah had contributed just now, that, you know, I think what's so beautiful about what you're doing in your work, Marla, and what I think all of us are kind of speaking to in different ways so far, is that there's so much talk in our industry, the Broadway side of our industry, about like, what's your brand? Like, what are you bringing? Like, what's your you know? And that's great. Like, as an artist, you need it. But when you can really take the things that you are at a core level passionate about, in regards to social change, and make that activism part of your brand, like literally inseparable from who you are as an artist, then the people who you're working with, they know what they're getting up front. And you don't have to, you know, hide or apologize for caring about things beyond the artistic work. I had a really incredible experience with NBC, where they pushed one of our episodes back to give Donald Trump a town hall when he had refused to do the debate with Biden. And I like tweeted something like, shame on NBC, which, like, as you know, a cast member of a new show, you think would be like a really dangerous thing to do. And maybe it was, but I was like, they know who Shakina is.
You
like,
are.
I don't keep my mouth shut about these things. And it actually spurred like a huge letter from like all top level creatives at NBC. So yeah, just like the more that we can own the things that we stand for, in the ways we represent ourselves in day-to-day life, and like carry that with us, the more freedom we have in the room to talk and speak up for ourselves and the communities that we care about and represent.
My dad had actually, because one of the things that even launched me further very early on in the ideation for Claim Our Space Now, was seeing that Nederlander had made however many thousands of dollars of donations to Donald Trump. And I was a former Jimmy Award winner in 2015. So I was like, I'm just, and I was like, this disturbs me in a way, like I feel, and I've performed in some of his houses across the country, and beautiful. So it felt like a personal responsibility to me to like say something. I was immensely hurt. And I was able to draw up a petition calling on him and the Broadway League to make a commitment to at least donating to, not Claim Our Space Now, but to Black Lives Matter, and making a statement to hold accountability. And I got all the Jimmy Award, like that was my first kind of bit of organizing. And my dad was telling me like, do you really want to poke the bear? I was like, Dad, this matters to me. This impacts me, and the troves of Black and brown students that they tend to lean on to really push the Jimmy Awards brand. You think of Eva Nobazada, you think of Jalen Josie, like we are a troupe of people that have been able to push the Jimmy Award brand forward. And it didn't make sense for me to sit and take it. And with that, oh yes, 10 minutes, oh gosh. I'm gonna stop. But point is, we're speaking with our full chest.
I know we only have a few minutes, 10 minutes left, and I really just want to add in, I hope that everyone who is watching this and listening to this now, especially with the things, taking nothing away from anybody else, but the things that Marla and Shakina are saying is that the undercurrent, one of the undercurrents here, is that polarity is okay. Remember, there is no profit in neutrality. Just trying to make it get along, and just, all that. There's no profit in neutrality. Profit in terms of this, profit in terms of getting a message across, profit in PROPHET, as in prophecy. There is no profit in neutrality. You want people to say, yes, I am with you, or hell no, I don't want to be anywhere near you. That is currency in today's market. And so, Marla, Shakina, everyone here, the reason why we've had the successes we've had, the reason why we've been able to get our message across is because we were willing to say, this is what I stand for, I shall not be moved. You're either with me or you're not with me. And so I hope that in terms of activism, in terms of the energy that's coming up, especially in people who are just getting out of school or people who are trying to figure out what their brand is, as Shakina was talking about, the message is, please remember that, because that will serve you so much, not only now, but in the long run as well.
I'd like to just add also that the phrase, we talk a lot about zero tolerance, which again is sometimes very useful rigidity. But another important concept is zero indifference, which is another stance, and it's a supporter of and works with zero tolerance. But if you can get people to get out of their place of don't poke the bear to a zero indifference stance, small sometimes, but very crucial thawings and understandings and actions can take place.
Beautifully said. That is very true. We need to get out of that. And if each person holds themselves accountable to that, it is easier for everyone to jump on board. Natasha, I'd like to move along to you. You were named Associate Artistic Director of Playwrights Horizon, and you are the co-founder of Beehive Dramaturgy Studio. During this time, you were not only responsible for the pivot of yourself, but the pivot of 2 companies and the careers and livelihoods of a multitude of artists. What was that experience?
Yeah, this past year has been a lot. What I find so fascinating and upsetting and beautiful all at once is that there's so much that's shared and also so much that really intensely varies from one person's experience of the pandemic to another's. And so for me, honestly, keeping overall vision front and center, which is something that I think in some ways I've just had since I have always been a person, and in other ways has like completely evolved through this pandemic in a lot of ways. So keeping that front and center, and also my positionality. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot during the pandemic, is like really where am I located in the landscape of theater and the landscape of America and the landscape of what these movements are that are happening, and what can I specifically do versus broadly talking about what I care about, because I feel like I've been doing that my whole life and it doesn't get far enough, or not far enough for me to be happy with it. So so I think, as someone who has worked off Broadway in like a mainstream theater space that does usually new work, but also I have a dramaturgy collective, which is like a small organization that does work that I feel like tries to fill in the gaps between large organizations and freelance work, and then also freelance work I do. So like really figuring out which hat am I wearing and where am I and what is this space known for, and how do you push the envelope in this space so that all of these spaces are being pushed to a different, part of their evolution. And then how do you build bridges between all of these and really work together? Because a lot of this is really about working together in ways that still maintain multiplicity. I think there's a lot of conversation about solidarity in a way that I fully enormously believe in. And then artistically speaking, I'm like, okay, what I find really fascinating is how do we do that while also knowing that there's lots of different kinds of stories and storytellers and kinds of storytelling. And I want to be a producer and a dramaturg who's really supporting the space for different kinds of artists so that it really, gets pushed forward in terms of like, I mean, really every artist from any historically oppressed community in the American theater, which is like many, many people. How do we support each of these people in different ways, so that so that everything is just like much richer and more interesting, than it has been before, which is very possible. It's really just a philosophical shift and a shift in like budget priorities. It's very boring, actually. I think a lot of this is actually very boring in terms of how it can actually be done. And that's what frustrates me the most sometimes, because I'm like, everyone's saying it in such eloquent ways and finding new ways to make this so obvious. But at the end of the day, it's really just like, do you care about this? Just find a way to make it happen and name the things that are difficult because of the country we're in, because of capitalist systems, because of systemic racism, because of all of these things that need to be taken down. And that is like an overlapping struggle. But there's some things that can still be done, purely by just changing your mind, by just moving the resources around, by prioritizing and making very clear to whoever is in your network, this is what is important to me. But I will say, I do also believe that some of this is genuinely like a government thing. It's like we're in America and the government does not support us enough. Like artists are not valued in the ways that we should be. I say we, but also I always sort of, as dramaturg, I feel like I wear artist hat. As producer, I'm like, I just want to help everyone. But for me, like a big pivot in this pandemic was starting Amplifying Activists Together, which is this weekly series where everyone gathers for an hour over Zoom and we follow on the ground progressive and radical activists in amplifying movements that are happening in New York State specifically. For example, there are workers in this state who got not a cent of pandemic relief, mostly undocumented workers, of course, and Black and brown folks. That didn't happen for the entire pandemic until this week. We actually had this huge win because of Make the Road New York and some of the organizations that are doing this on the ground work. And that is like so healing and exciting to know that we can just plug in for an hour a week. Honestly, that's all it takes. It's really not that much more flashy than just making calls and sending emails for an hour a week and following the people who know what they're doing. And then channeling a lot of this, infusing all of this into our art and finding ways to introduce questions and mystery and all the stuff that I think we love art for. So for me, the pivot has been like a bunch of different pivots in different parts of the landscape, if that makes sense.
Thank you for that. That is very true. And the symbiotic relationship between that side, one side of the table and the other side of the table, it's a necessary thing, and we have to make that a priority. Michael, we're going to round it out with, you have a podcast called Dear Multi-Hyphenate, and you say multi-hyphenating saved your life during the pandemic. What do you mean by that? What is a multi-hyphenate?
Yeah, I just want to also say I'm in awe of everyone. Like, I'm so happy to have gone last, because listening to you all, I'm just like, this is your stories, your points of views are all so incredible, and I'm so honored to be in all of your presences. Like, truthfully, I'm like jaw on the floor, gobsmacked. So yes, I say a multi-hyphenate, and I have a podcast about this. So if you want to know more, and if these panelists haven't been on my podcast already, they're going to be. So, check in. But a multi-hyphenate is an artist who has multiple proficiencies that cross-pollinate to help flourish professional capabilities. So that means like my hyphens are photographer, producer, writer, performer, and podcaster, and they all will help each other exist. My income with my photography helps me produce projects that I can be in or I'm passionate about. I then write about them or talk about it on my podcast, and that audience then comes into my studio and give me money so I can produce more projects. That's multi-hyphenation. But why it saved my life. I'm a COVID long hauler. I had COVID in March, and I didn't realize how it left me. And we're talking about a lot of the time in this panel, we're talking about purpose. We're talking about drive. I call it the why. And my why, when I realized what it was, which is I produce non-quotidian artistry that benefits the world around me, when I realized really what it was, I was able to cut the fat of things that I wasn't worried about anymore. Artistic relationships that were weighing me down, jobs I was taking that were weighing me down just because the money was good. No more. And Al is a huge, I mean, everyone on this panel are huge inspirations for me for helping me make those decisions. Al, we had a very specific conversation, of that artists are allowed to have agency. And it starts with understanding who we are and the stories and our points of views and what we're actually fighting for. And I, in this time as a white person, really had to check my privilege and understand when it was time to lead, when it was time to sit back and listen, when it was time to, stop performative activism, stop relying on social media to do my activism, but show up, actually walk out and do and donate. And that's my pivot. That was my personal pivot. And it started with my why and my multi-hyphenating point of view of that. Each proficiency I have is going to reflect my why, which will make me a better human, which will make me a better artist, which will make me a better activist. And that's how it saved my life. It also healed me, because having something to focus on, having that focus, raising the stakes that much, put me out of my body and took me out of my head, and I began to heal. So that's how it saved my life.
Lovely, gorgeous. Thank you for that, Michael. And
thank you.
My meeting also saved my life, so I'm with you on that. We do have one more. We're going to run a couple minutes over. I'm so sorry, but everyone's just going to love it anyway. Justin, you're writing a book called Unshakable Confidence, which in itself is a pivot, a bloom. Can you leave us with really, what does it take to approach a pivot, and what makes that a beautiful thing for everyone?
That's a lovely question. Thank you for asking it. I'll leave you with this. When I talk about confidence, what does confidence really mean? Well, some of the myths around confidence are either you're born with it or you're not. You have it or you don't. You need a degree, or you need a lot of money, or letters after your name in order to have confidence. And it's just not true. Confidence is a skill, just like riding a bike, just like tying your shoelaces, just like chewing gum without swallowing it. It's a skill that you can learn and that you got to fall down a bunch of times to do, but eventually you get it, and it's something you build over life. And so what does confidence mean? If we look at the English root word of confidence, it's confide. What does confide mean? To trust. That's why we tell our secrets to a confidant, right? But when we don't confide in self, when we don't confide in ourselves, aka have confidence, aka trust in ourselves, then if we take this concept, and please, if you hear nothing else that I've said, hear this. When you realize that people don't see you through their eyes, they see you through your eyes, you'll realize that when you don't have confidence, you are literally telling everyone you meet that they cannot trust you. Say that again. When you recognize that people see you not through their eyes, but through your eyes, when you don't have confidence, aka when you don't trust in yourself, you are literally telling everyone you meet that they can't trust you. So when you walk into an audition room and you don't have confidence, you're literally telling the people on the other side of the table, please don't hire me. Don't trust me. When you're trying to develop an intimate relationship with someone, and you don't have confidence, you're literally telling that person, yeah, you can't trust me. When you're trying to do business with someone, when you're trying to make a pivot and you don't have confidence, aka trusting yourself, you're telling not only the people you're trying to serve, but you're telling the people in right there in front of you that you can't trust me to do business with me. So it is so vitally important that we trust ourselves. And I'll leave you with this. The thing that I talk about when I talk about unshakable confidence, unshakable core confidence, is developing 4 key skills and applying those 4 key skills to the 4 key areas of life. The 4 key skills are clarity, commitment, creativity, and certainty. And then when we take those and we apply them to our bodies, our spirituality, whatever that means for you, our relationships with our significant other, our children, our families. And when we apply it to our business, making money, keeping money, serving. Then we begin create the foundation that we can build a sustainable life, a sustainable business, a sustainable relationship, a sustainable body that we can then use to do what it is that we love to do and what we all do, which is express ourselves. We've been given a gift, the gift of expression. And it is this beautiful thing that allows us to constantly, we make pivots all the time. It's what we do as artists. My God, right? And so when we really do it and we trust ourselves, aka we have confidence, then the pivot is not the challenge. Pivot's easy. The challenge is, like so many people alluded here too, is to let go and to surrender. To have a vision, which we're creative people, it's easy enough to do, but to surrender the belief systems. What do you want to call it? Capitalism? You want to call it misogyny? You want to call it racism? Those are all symptoms of a larger problem. Those are symptoms of a belief system that we've been indoctrinated with media and all the crap that we put into ourselves. And so when we can begin to surrender those things, educate ourselves, attend wonderful panels like this with people who legitimately want to serve at the highest level, like everyone here does. And we begin to educate ourselves and we begin to learn to trust ourselves. Then the pivot's the easy part. That's the easy part. It's just then creating in those empty spaces where we have let go of those beliefs, where we have let go of all those things people have told us that we are or we should be or we shouldn't be. The fun part then becomes filling that space with new ideas, better ideas, beliefs that allow us to serve at a higher level and that ultimately build that foundation of trust in ourselves, trust in one another, trust in our community. And that to me is what confidence is and how confidence can help you make the pivot that you know you can make and that you deserve to make so that you can have the things that you deserve to have in your life.
Come on, rhetorical skills. If you need readers for your book, I would love to read your book. I can't wait. It sounds great.
Thank you. It's coming. It's coming soon.
Amen.
I absolutely am so honored to have been on a panel with each and every one of you. This has been such a wonderful experience for me.
Same.
Beautifully said. Thank you.
Same.
I feel like everyone has really hit here that the pandemic has given us an avenue to find our most authentic selves. And really, as artists, that is the ultimate goal, is to be the most authentic version of yourself, to share it with the world and make real change. So thank each of you for attending, being here, bringing your energy and your spirit and your mind. And we really appreciate all of that. It was really beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for moderating for us, and you're all amazing. Love you all.
Much love.
Great group.